Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for making time again on another beautiful summer day. We really appreciate it. And we have another packed agenda this evening, so we're going to try to keep things moving along. So thank you in advance for your brevity as we kind of try to orchestrate a packed meeting. With that, I'm going to ask Candace to kind of walk through sort of the Zoom 101 so that we can kick into the meeting. So Candace.
Yeah, thanks, Janelle. Hi, everybody. My name is Candace Goodrich. I'm here filling in for Susan Heyman. So I'll start with giving a few reminders about Zoom, and I'm sure you're all quite familiar at this point. But for our committee members, just want to point out and remind you about the participants icon down here at the bottom of your screen. That's where you will click and get this nice little participant box that should pop up. You'll be able to see who's here with us today. Also down at the bottom, there's a little, an icon for raise your hand right there that you'll click on if you want to signal that you have a comment or a question. Janelle will call on you, and I'll try to keep my eye out for you as well. If you run into any issues there, just kind of actually raise your hand and wave into the screen, and we'll look out for you there too. For members of the public that are here, I'll note that your screen looks a little bit different, and you won't see this list of panelists and attendees, but you should see counts. So you'll see how many folks are here. And at the bottom of your screen down here, there's a little icon to raise your hand, and that is where you will click to signify that you have a comment to share later on when we get to the public comment portion of our agenda. So during the meeting, we'll keep folks on mute, and again, just ask that if you're not speaking to keep yourself on mute to just help reduce background noise. I might notice if you're not speaking and you forget to mute yourself and there's background noise going on, I might mute you. And again, that's just solely to help reduce noise. You'll be able to unmute yourself when you're ready to speak. And if for whatever reason your name is misspelled, you can come back up here in the panelist box, hover over your name, and a little blue box will pop up where you can correct the spelling of your name. But hopefully by now we've got that all squared away. A few other notes for everybody. So this meeting is being live streamed and it is being recorded. We'll post the recording on ODOT's YouTube page, and it'll also be posted on the Rose Quarter website. That's just to help with general accessibility so other folks can participate and watch. The public, you're here and listen only. As I mentioned, there'll be a brief public comment period at the end, and that will be your chance to speak. So we'll talk more about how you can do that when we get there. And if you have a more substantive comment that you want to share, we also have the project inbox where you can submit your comments to the COAC. That's info@i5rosequarter.org, and please just put COAC public comment in the subject line there so we don't miss it. All public comments that we receive today will be part of the meeting record. And I also just want to note that Sophia Alvarez Castro is here as our technical helper. So if you run into any issues today throughout the webinar, you can reach out to her and she will help you. Her number is there on the screen. It's 503-998-3711. And I think that's it for me. I'll turn it back to you, Jono.
Great, thank you, Candace, and welcome for those who have just dialed in. And for those who don't know, my name is John L. Bell with Espousal Strategies, and I am the facilitator for COAC. As I indicated earlier, we have a fairly packed agenda, and my goal is to get us done on time as we have so far. So kicking right in terms of our agenda today, we'll go over real quickly the ground rules. We're going to receive an ODOT project update. Megan's prepared to do that. We'll move forward with the COAC charter. Again, thanks for all of you who have already contributed your comments and thoughts on that. We'll talk about the COAC workforce expectations for the project, receive public comment, and then discuss next steps. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this will be familiar for all COAC participants, but just to go over again, to sort of ground us as we move forward in our discussion, really important that we let everyone participate by listening to and respecting diverse views and opinions. Again, that's why you're all here, is to offer your perspective and counsel. Listen with an open mind, value learning from different input. You all come to this work with lived experience and professional experience. We want to create an opportunity, a space, such that all of that is considered. Stay open to new ways of doing things. This project already, pushes to be on the cutting edge in a lot of areas. It's really important from this perspective, the COAC perspective, that we're doing that by staying open to new ways of doing things. Treat others constructively and respectfully. Next slide, please. Respect the role of the facilitator to guide the group process. My role is to help facilitate the dialogue, and at times I may need to interject or nudge us along. But again, the end goal is to keep us sort of moving forward and on track. I know oftentimes we can kind of get stuck in terms of one particular perspective, and what's important is that we have a collective perspective. Attack the problem, not the person. Disagreement, frustrations, and differences of opinion are acknowledged, explored, and addressed. So thank you for that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan to kick us off with the ODOT project update.
Thanks, John L., and thanks everyone for being here tonight. And actually, if you could go back just to the update slide for a second. I am actually joined by Brendan Finn, our Director of the Urban Mobility Office this evening. And before I jump into project-specific updates, Brendan, I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit of an urban mobility related update.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you, Megan. Janelle, thank you. Members of the COAC, appreciate you having me here tonight. Again, my name is Brendan Finn. I'm the Director of the Urban Mobility Office. Just briefly, this was a new office that was created by Director Strickler and the Transportation Commission to do things differently. And I'm going to explain what that means in just a minute. As a brief introduction, because I know many of you, I'm been in this role for about 5.5 months now, been learning a lot. I feel like I should have been here a little bit sooner, but I've been following your work with interest. Very excited on the new role that you have to really push the envelope on this. My background, before that, I worked for a couple of years for Governor Brown as her transportation policy advisor. And previous to that, I spent 19 years working mostly as chief of staff for Commissioner Dan Saltzman at the city of Portland. But way back about 20 years ago, I was the liaison to the Bureau of Environmental Services for the commissioner in charge, Commissioner Saltzman. We were embarking on a $1.4 billion project, a CMGC approach. It was with a joint venture called Empress-Gilo Healy. That's when I got to meet someone named James Posey. James, you will remember this. This was before the days when we had things like COACs. James, you pushed the envelope, you pushed me, you took us to task, and opened my eyes to some of the things that were happening and some of the things that we needed to do. Obviously, you and I have had a long relationship since then. I think that project, we did what we could, very similar as far as the contracting approach to what we're doing now. But I wanted to share that experience because I see James on the screen, and that memory came back to me. So I took on this role now for a lot of reasons, mainly because ODOT really wants to turn the corner and doing things differently. And that's was exciting to me. Where that starts, and one of the things I want to talk about doing things differently, is for this agency to recognize its racist past, to recognize what it's done for this in the past, figure out how we're going to move forward from that and benefit those that have been that have not received benefit for what's happened. As that relates to the Rose Quarter Improvement Project, we know, everyone here, that the construction of I-5 through the Albina neighborhood destroyed a large portion of that neighborhood without benefit to our African-American community that was there, our African-American community. We want this project to gain benefit for that African-American community. The work that you're doing, holding our contractors accountable, is going to be one big step. We still have to do more. We're still trying to figure that out. We don't have the answers. We think we'll have those with you. But we're starting with that recognition as an agency. I'm happy to be a part of that. I feel like it's a long time coming, many years in the making, for that acknowledgement, and also to really appreciate from me to the group the work that you're doing. Obviously, you have great resources here with the project team. I want you to consider me one of those resources as well to support your work and really try to move the dial on this. So with that, I really, in respecting Jonel's wishes to move things forward, I wanted to say a thank you, make that acknowledgement, and know that we're committed to this work. We are going to keep showing up. You are going to hold us to task, and we're going to keep being there. So that's my commitment to you. I know that's the project's team commitment to you as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, take any comments, criticisms. I'm here to listen as well. So with that, again, just much appreciation for all of you and the work that you do as we try to really correct many, many historical wrongs as they relate to this project and its original construction through the historic Albina community.
All right. Thank you, Brendan. I am happy to go into my project update, but I also want to respect the committee and pause to see if there are any direct questions to Brendan before I jump in.
I thought I'd get one from James at least. Come on, James. we got history, man. We got history.
I see Michael's raised his hand. And just real quick, everyone, if you could please use the electronic raise hand function. This will allow for us to, me in particular, to monitor who has a question or a comment, and such that we can be fair across the board. So Michael Birch is first, and then James Posey will be after that.
So, Brendan, nice to see you again. My question, listening to you and the commitment to the community goes to Albina Vision. Are they back at the table, or are they still out?
Well, I mean, we are here with open arms. We believe in what they're trying to do. We want to help in any way possible, help achieve where they want to go. I know the commission, and that goes down to us at the staff level. We want to do whatever we can to create the environment for them to participate and to see their vision come alive and have this project be a part of it, be a catalyst for it, is something that we're committed to.
But are they back? That was my question. Are they back or no?
There is no official word on that, I guess, right now, Michael. I think that they want to just show through our deeds that we're serious. We got to earn this trust. We got to earn it. We can't just say, come back after, the long history that's happened. We can't just, it's not words, it's actions. Obviously, I'm here saying words, but I know I'm going to work with every single one of you and with them to try to make sure that our actions represent where our values lie. And we're, as I said, Michael, we'll keep showing up. But as of right now, I think that they don't feel like they feel that trust yet in us, and I know that we got to earn it.
James Posey?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good, glad. So, Brendan, listen, man, if you ever decide to get a second career, I think I'm going to sign you up to be a priest. You really are a good guy. I mean, in spite of what people say about you, you really are a good guy. so, I'm glad that you're on this team. It gives me some confidence that we will, in fact, think outside the box. And let me just tell you, one of the things that's on my heart right now, and that is the absence of Black women in construction. That's on my heart. You all have an opportunity to do some things differently than you historically have done. There are virtually no Black women in construction, and it's a traditional thing that have left Black women out. And what saddens me about this project is that you all had an opportunity to set goals specifically with those groups who have been historically left out. You didn't do it. It isn't in the contract. There is no real prerequisites for you all to make that sort of a commitment to doing something. But you ought to, out of just the rightness of doing it, put together something that will accentuate trying to bring Black women into this industry and do it in a big way. You got a vice president now who is going to be selected as a vice president of the United States of America. The least we could do here in Oregon is put together something that will accentuate Black women in construction. So I'm going to shut up at that point and move on over to the to the papacy. Brendan, you're a good guy, man. Take care.
Well, thank you, Mr. Posey. I know the team here is taking notes, and I know that that's duly noted. And I think we all agree with you, and we got to figure out some strategies to move that forward. And I'll let Pastor Hennessy to tell me what my next career should be.
So,
but thank you. I appreciate those words, sir. Thank you.
So we have Joe, Lee, and Pastor Hennessy, and I'm going to ask that those folks be it in terms of this piece because we have a packed agenda. So if folks can kind of keep their comments short, that will allow us to move forward. So Mr. McPherson.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of follow up on Michael's question with respect to the Albina vision. Can you just, I'm unclear what in and out means. So maybe I don't have enough context. What does that mean?
Sure, Joe. Good to hear your voice. Haven't seen you in a little while. Yeah, what that means is they were part of the executive steering committee that we had established, which is basically going to be making a lot of decisions around design and other portions of the project. As you know, we're very early on. We're at 15% design. We're going to be working with the contractor and our A&E group to kind of figure out where the rest of the 85% goes and how we make decisions there. Megan can go into more detail on that, but I know we don't have time. But they were a part of that group along with the city of Portland, Metro, Portland Public Schools. We had some community members there from the Northeast Housing Strategy, Hilltop Project, and others. NAMAC is on it as well. So that steering committee, they decided to leave that steering committee, Joe, because they felt like things weren't moving in the direction that they thought it should, that things weren't having enough. And we own that. I don't think we want to push back that that's not true. Or we probably weren't moving quick enough on some of the issues. We want to learn with those us. We want to learn and address those because we feel like we have a long way to go and we believe in what they're doing. So they left the executive steering committee, Joe. That was kind of what Michael was asking as far as them being kind of in and out. So right now they're not participating in that role because I'll let them speak for themselves. But my understanding is they just didn't feel like we were genuine enough, moving forward quickly enough, and so we own that. We got to own that.
Thank you.
Pastor, I believe you were next, and then Lee. Pastor, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes. First of all, thank you. It's always good to be here, and I'm grateful for everybody who's here today. I wanted to begin by saying that I'm so proud of my brother, James Posey, who has already been a prophet today in determining Brendan's next stop, and he's already elected Harris to the vice presidency. So I know we're on a good roll, but I would also say that I pray that we will take seriously the moment, a part of what James has said, which is the importance of inclusion when it comes to Black women in construction. I know that somebody's taking notes today, and I just want to underscore that and underscore the fact that the entirety of this project, and the reason why I've been so supportive of it, has been I see this as a tremendous opportunity, particularly for the Black and Brown communities, and that we ought to be doing everything that we can to both set goals and also make sure that we are meeting them. I think it's great that I've already said many things great about the staff that's already around this project, but I think the addition of Brendan is a great thing. And I believe that there's a lot of great things that can happen. And the last thing I would say is my hope and my prayer is that we will be able to really hear the concerns of Albina Vision, and that we can really work together to figure out how to make this a win for everybody. And so the hope for them to come back to the table and provide their support is a big deal. And I'm grateful for it. And again, I want to thank you for tonight. And prayerfully, that's the only sermon I'll give today.
Thank you, Pastor. Brendan or Megan, did you want to respond to that?
Just thank you. And, you know, in regards, Pastor Hennessy, to your comments, and James, to yours as well, around Black women in construction, that is exactly why you are here as the COAC, is to be that extension of our team to hold the contractor accountable in ways that we might not be able to from what is written in the contract perspective. But you bring the community expectations, you bring the community expertise and the lived experience, the professional experience. And I'm excited to have the conversation about the change in charter, and also the conversation towards the end at the last half of this meeting that's really going to frame up workforce expectations from the community on top of the contracting requirements that we have, so that we can get to those outcomes that we're all driving towards. So thank you for continuing to hang with us and continuing to be part of it, because it's going to take all of us to get to that outcome.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Lee?
Yes, I'll be real brief. Good evening, everyone. I'm hearing a lot of answers, but I don't think they're specifically answering the question concerning Albina, the AVT, as well as City of Portland, as well as other parties that were on the executive steering committee. And what I'm not hearing is what's being done to keep them engaged, or reach out to them to keep them apprised. How, Brandon, Megan, are you making sure or demonstrating that earned and valued trust? That's what I'm not hearing, because one of those individuals, or two rather, directly impact my work. And so I'm very concerned about that because I get asked on that on a weekly basis. So if you could address that very quickly, I appreciate it.
Well, Lee, thank you for the question. And, we know we have to, there's a couple of things that we want to prove, that we want to do things differently. And one of the things was reinvigorating, and I'll let Megan talk about this, some of the work about the caps. I think there was maybe a perception we weren't moving quickly or seriously enough on how we do the covers and the caps, and our kind of commitment to a process that can lead to connecting the community and being in alignment with that vision. So we've reinitiated that work. It was held up a little bit, and we've done so in a very quick fashion. We're doing that in the light of day. What we understand, Lee, is that that was one of the main issues. So that's one of the ones we're addressing quickly. We want to reach out and see if we're hitting the mark and making sure that that we're doing that correctly. But that's our understanding of what one of the main issues was on that work, and we've started that in earnest. And I'm sure we could have you briefed on that, as Nolan Lionheart and ZGF are really putting that work in earnest now. So hopefully we'll be addressed by our deeds and taken seriously by the work that we're doing. And that's how we're moving forward to show them that we're serious.
So are
that we can
you
be trusted.
providing updates to those groups even though they're not participating? I guess is what I'm getting at. Is there some communication
That's correct.
between? That's what I'm asking.
That is correct. We have reached out to them, and they said they can't participate. We've asked them to engage, because ZGF is going to be independent from the agency in conducting this work, which we feel is very important to build trust. And we'd like them to give input on that. We've extended that out. We will continue to do so, Lee, because we think it's critical to making sure whatever we do, we provide an environment that aligns with their vision.
So with that, I do need to wrap. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Megan, did I hit that right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we're knowing that the city and Albina Vision Trust are not participating in the highway cover evaluation. We're still sharing the project information with them so that they're aware of the work that's being done. And again, it's about fulfilling the commitments that we made to do that work. And so that is one of the steps that we're taking to hopefully re-earn that trust back.
Yeah, and I see I have two other questions. I'm going to hold on that for now because I want Megan to finish up her update because then we have to get to other elements of the agenda. So Megan, if you could quickly go through the rest of your update, and then we'll take any questions from that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say, since our last meeting, the most significant update and action that I have to report on is that we've continued to build out our project team by bringing on the CMGC contractor as an important partner. It's really going to be helping us design and build the project that reflects the community values that we're putting forth as part of the project. So last month, many of you probably saw we issued a notice of intent to award for the Hamilton Sunt joint venture team that's in association with Raymore. And the intention is to have that CMGC team on board early this fall, so really in the coming months. And it's a significant milestone for ODOT, and it's one that does demonstrate how we are starting to do business differently. It's the first time within the Portland metro region that ODOT is using CMGC and bringing on a contractor early in the design phase. And many thanks to COAC and all of you specifically. It's the first time that we've developed specifications that are responsive to community recommendations. And so I do not believe that we would have gotten the robust DBE goal range of 18 to 22% and some of the aspirational workforce targets, a mentor protege program, among other things in those specifications if it weren't for your voices and your experience and really holding us to task to get those items in there. So I thank you for your assistance and continued support in pushing us to evolve our contracting specifications. So with that, we'll be getting into the DBE and workforce goals later in the meeting. But again, thanks for your input there and how that we've been responsive to your feedback. And so bringing on the CMGC as a partner on our project is going to help us build broader community partnerships. Really a demonstration of leveraging the power of this COAC. As we together develop the project, and it'll help us increase economic opportunities as we support to build up the trades and DBE and workforce capacity And all along the way, working in tandem with you as the COAC to hold the CMGC accountable in meeting the contracting requirements, but also being responsive to the community expectations that you'll be helping us set. So if you go to the next slide. Thank you. This is just a reminder of where we are in the process in terms of overall schedule. And Brendan mentioned earlier, you know, we are still very early in design and we have a lot of work to do. We're at about the 15% design mark with 85% still to go. And so this diagram that you see here in front of you is just shows the progress from where we are today. So at 15% design, where we are today, we have a high-level design concept that's really based on the work from the prior planning phase. And so beginning in spring of next year is when we'll kick off the 30% design phase. And this is the point where the design concepts move from sort of conceptual assumption land into more refined concepts, moving towards decisions, not yet final decisions, but moving towards decisions. And so at the end of the 30% design mark, that's where we'll have the true understanding of the project's footprint and the right-of-way needs for the project. And then as we approach in the end of 2022, we shift gears into the 60% design mark. And this is where the concepts continue to be refined and the design details are progressed. I'll also note that this is a time, you know, being CMGC delivery, that we'll be start to engaging in some early work package opportunities. And so as we bring on the CMGC this fall and start to think about those opportunities, we'll be making sure that there's feedback loops with this COAC as those ideas are being contemplated, specifically in regards to how we look at early work package opportunities that maximize opportunities for the DBE community and workforce. So then moving into 2022 is where we continue into the 90% design market. This is really where the design details start to become finalized. So we still have between now and 2022 before anything is finalized. And then as we get into 2023, that's the 100% design mark, and that's the design that's ready for construction. And of course, all along the way, we'll be engaging you as the COAC and the community and our partners to inform these design decisions along the way. So I wanted everyone to just be sort of aware of the progress and the process ahead and just where we are in that as of today. I'll also, note, I think we talked about this, I think, at our prior two meetings, project governance, but you've heard mention of executive steering committee. Just as a reminder, we do have an executive steering committee, and that body is really focused on bringing our regional and state leadership together to help inform and recommend decisions that go up to our Oregon and Transportation Commission for the project. And their work is supported by you as the COAC, focused on the DBE and workforce program, and also complemented with a community advisory committee that's bringing the grassroots community input into the design work as well. The steering committee is actively working on finalizing proposed values that will guide the project at all levels. And so those values that are in discussion that are proposed include restorative justice, community input, mobility focus, and then climate action and improved public health. And so these values have been crafted by the regional and community partners and will continue to guide the project and the decision-making process moving forward. And so the Executive Steering Committee at their next meeting in the end of September will continue on the refinement of these values and anticipate adoption of those values at that meeting. And then those values will help guide the work of this COAC as well, and can help be a framer for setting the specific kind of guiding principles and expectations of this group. I will touch on one more piece, knowing that we're short on time here, but on the technical analysis side of things, just wanted, again, to bring attention to the independent assessment of the highway covers that's taking place. So we're remaining committed to fulfilling the OTC's direction to complete this independent assessment of the highway covers. And really, we understand that this is of primary interest to our partners and the community. What is going to go on top of those highway covers? How are they going to look and feel and be designed? And so it's a significant opportunity to provide and discuss community connections and establish partnerships for economic development to help achieve the broader vision for this area as well. So you heard mention of ZGF. ZGF has been brought on board as the independent assessment team for that work. They'll be working under the guide of the Executive Steering Committee values, and then in a way that helps best address our partners' needs. We're working closely with Metro and Portland Public Schools, making sure that information is being shared out to the other partners, including Albina Vision Trust in the city, as that work moves forward. So that work is carrying forward over the next about 6 months, with completion of some highway cover development scenarios that will be going to both the steering committee and then the OTC for recommendation in early 21, about February timeframe. So with that, I will pause and see if there are any further questions.
And we have 3 questions right now. And if COAC members, if you can, again, please be brief so that we can accomplish all that's in our agenda. So we have James, then we have Kenichi, and then Lee.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
I can. Yep.
You can? Okay, good. So the Albina Vision thing, you guys know me. I'm very clear. I support the Albina Vision's concept because, ODOT hasn't been all that good to the African-American community, and they basically got a lot more to do. And hopefully with Brendan and all the folk looking at this, we will do something different than we historically have done. So I support them. But when you go and look at Albina Vision's website and you see all those daggum developers on there, people from Bob Walsh and all those other folk, you wonder what the real agenda is for Albina Vision. And I have yet to see anything in Albina Vision that really talks about how we're going to transfer this wealth from historically white folk back to black folk. When they come up with something that will show us at the end of the day, when we're done with this project, where in the hell will the money go to? And when you look at their board, go look at the board. Don't take James Posey's word for it. See who's on that daggum thing. Ask them what their plan is and more specificity so we can see where the hell their plan is for where the damn money is going to go to. So I'm going to say that. Okay, y'all can go look at it for yourself. But at the end of the day, let them come up with something to show us what we can really support them on in terms of their opposition to this I-5 project. Let's work together to get it done. They can do it. I like Rakayat. I like all those people over there. But look at that board. Look at those developers and stuff. So I'm just going to shut up on that particular point. But here's the deal. ODOT has a lot to do around the peripheral things. I've been doing this stuff for 25 years. The real estate industry out here, the banks, where's this money going to go to? And I'm looking at the CARES program, and I'm watching how these black folk are moving money through the CARES program to banks that are favorable to black people who are really made a commitment to do something different. And I'm hoping that the concept that you guys are looking at will filter this through all the peripheral industries and work that has built money for white people throughout these projects. This is serious stuff right now, folks. This is an opportunity. So not just the construction, kudos on Raymore. They're going to do that $100 million. I don't have a problem with Raymore because they're going to do their thing. But what about Sun? What about where's that money going to be flowing through? How are we going to infuse our community to try to bring back some of these local businesses? So I'm passionate about working with this thing. Yeah. But listen, let's get this right this time. Let's get it right this time. Thinking outside the box is something we got to do, and it needs to be on paper. Good intentions is not good enough.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, James. Megan, did you want to react to any of that?
I just want to say thank you, James. Again, I cannot wait until we continue to move forward with this COAC and once the CMGC is on board, because James, these are the exact types of conversations that I hope continue directly with the CMGC. Help us hold us accountable, number one, but also help hold our contracting partner accountable to achieve those outcomes that we're working towards.
Great. Kenichi?
So I think I first of all, apologies for showing up a little late. I had to take care of a couple things. And I walked into the meeting when we were talking about Black women and ODOT working with Black women. And I thought that was interesting because it's been my history with ODOT on this COAC as a Black woman that ODOT doesn't really, as it regards to this project, have follow through with some of the emails that I've sent and some of the things that I have raised in this committee. For example, I remember the last time I spoke with the group, I had mentioned really wanting to make sure that the immigrant community was active in the CAC. And I believe someone from ODOT was going to follow up with me, and that never happened. I had also previously sent another email on a separate issue and never got follow up on that issue. So I think it's interesting that ODOT is in this call saying that they're gonna work with Black women. I just walked into that and I kind of laughed a little bit. So on the Albina Vision piece, I wholeheartedly support the use of minority contractors and Black contractors in the project. I think it's absolutely important. And I do know, and James, as you were talking, I looked on the board. I see, a few people that I know on that board, and I think the board is pretty diverse. So maybe we can unpack, what the board has to do with this. I'm not quite sure. But I will say to ODOT that we need to create economic opportunities with this particular project. And we need to make sure that there's diversity in the number of contractors and business owners that are working on the project, but also leveraging expertise and the wisdom that certain groups like the Albina Vision have on this particular project, because I know some of the people that work with Albina Vision, and I happen to know the heart that they bring, and I know the expertise that they have. And so I think if we're clear on the goals, and I think there's alignment of goals in some areas, and figure out where our concentric circles are, we can certainly get to a point that makes sense without some of the contention that I've been kind of witnessing. We need to have clearly defined goals as a group for what we want from this. I heard, mentor protege programs. I personally haven't seen anything on that, and I'm curious about it. But I do think that as we move forward, it's important for some of the things that are said in this committee to actually have some teeth. And I come at every situation with openness of heart and grace, but I think I want to start seeing some implementation from some of the recommendations that we bring here.
Megan?
Yeah, thank you, Kenichi. And I guess first and foremost, I do want to make sure that we are following up and making sure that we are getting your questions answered. So I commit to following up with you immediately after this meeting to make sure that we are doing that. Not our intention to be unresponsive, but understand that is what's happening. So let's rectify that immediately. And I agree with you. I can't wait to get into action and having our CMGC partner on board to help us move forward with the mentor protege program specifically, with implementing, early work packages and work packages just in general that prioritize and increase opportunities for DBE and workforce. Absolutely, that's where we need to focus.
Great. Lee?
Yes, thank you. I'll be really brief. Megan, in the your slide here in the project design phase art, at what point are you establishing GMP? Because I think that's really important for this group to know and
Yeah.
keep in mind and focus, because that impacts how work packages are developed, designed, and advertised, recruited, etc., as well as it impacts workforce and subcontractor opportunities. Thanks.
Yep, that's a good question, Lee. And right now, we don't have it absolutely defined on when GMP will happen, but what we do know is it'll be closer to the 90% mark.
Art? Art? Art, you're muted.
Yeah, no, I had to switch over. There's a lag. I got to drop back a second and really understand why it takes so long to hear what the premise of most everybody have when it comes to communicating properly, being kind and doing it the right way, that we have to really throw a fit to catch attention when we have adverse situations that we want parity with. And what I mean by this is that James, I've heard him say several times, and not just one group, that he would like to see women more involved in the construction trades and business on the business end. And then I listened to, this lovely lady ask why she never got a phone call back. And then I think back to when I was being rejected in the school because of my name and who I am, being a mixed person. I think the bigger issue is that, which led to the CAP issue and the Albina communities, homes being taken from them and building the freeway, which creates a huge passion for the African American communities. I just want to understand, when are we going to take this seriously and quit dancing around stuff? And that goes all the way up to the governor's office, and it goes straight to the president's office. And then the administrators for all of the programs that have to build things across this nation. It's not just Portland, it's not just ODOT, it's not just Oregon, it's the whole United States. We have to pound our chests, raise our hands, and then get looked at. Why are we doing that? We need to start doing a proactive approach and truly take a serious nature to identify, correct, and do the right thing. James has every right to throw the biggest, loudest drum right now. And I'm saying that in behalf of the African, American community. And I'm also saying that for the Latino communities.
Thank you, Art.
But really, let me finish. I just got to say one more thing. There has to be an
Art, I think
drives that.
lost you a little bit. Up your back.
Okay, I just said that we really need to let these people understand that the people that need to make the corrections are the people that are not in this meeting, and they need to work at it.
Point well taken. Thanks for that. Megan or Brendan, I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Want to say thank you, Art, for expressing that, and you are right. So thank you.
We'll wrap up with James, and then I want to go to our next agenda item. So James, if you can keep it brief, please.
Yeah, I'm going to pass. I run my mouth quite a bit. I'm passing.
Okay. Wow, that's good facilitation right there that you're passing there. So, let's move on to the Community Oversight and Advisory Committee Charter. As you all know, this has been under discussion for the past 3 months. At our last meeting, we went through various sections of it. Following that, we received a number of comments and feedback from COAC members that has been integrated into this final document. So the purpose of the item tonight is to just indicate that this will be sort of the guiding document for this committee moving forward. As you all know, we are transitioning from the committee that we were into the new name as a Community Oversight and Advisory Committee. And so like any charter, we will update as need be. But again, this is a guide as to how we will do our work. So thank you all for offering your thoughts and perspectives and feedback. And again, the charter will be as only good as all of you helping to ensure that it's implemented and that we're keeping that accountability metric. So that I just wanted to make a note of that. And then Andre and Amber, I think you are queued up to talk about our workforce expectations for the project. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Amber and Andre.
Sure. If you could go to the next slide. So before we start on this, I just want to take a moment to talk about your role as an oversight role. And I just want to remind you what that means and how we need your help. And so, James, I wrote down all of your comments, and Kenichi, yours as well, about Black women, and it's a fabulous idea. So your role as the COAC is, what we need your help with is to provide those insights. The other thing that we really need your help with is to identify the problems, but also to provide solutions. So what we're going to talk about now is, as you know, ODOT is interested in high participation of people of color and women in our workforce. And in the contract, in our previous meeting, we laid out some of the highlights that were in the specifications that included several high workforce goals. And Kenichi, to your point about taking this seriously, I guess I would just offer a few things, which is, these are the highest goals I've seen ODOT. And I mean, there are many things that they have considered directly from you. The technical assistance program, the mini CMGC program, the goals. And the other thing is, even the way the charter is written was directly based on your feedback. In which case, the thing that you said at the very last meeting, which is the reason why we're having this topic tonight, is that, James, you and Felicia asked if you, the COAC, could talk about your goals. So what we're doing tonight is we want to hear from you about what your expectations are as it relates to workforce. And so once the CMGC is on board, which, ODOT is working on that your expectations will be communicated to the CMGC. And as we heard from you, you want to hear the data disaggregated by race, and we'll do that. Can you go to the next slide?
So this is where, as Amber said, we're going to do this for all the sections of the contract where there are goals set within the contract for the CMGC that we've outlined for you earlier. But what we're trying to do today, and we'll continue to do for the next couple of meetings, is to start with, here's what the contract says. Here's the goals that they have set. You can see targets, goals, federal requirements. And so we're pulling those out and saying, this is what has been set. Those are set because of federal regulations from that standpoint and from your input. But now it's your turn to say, if you're comfortable with these, great. If you'd like to see different ones, we're okay with that. We'd like to understand, at the end of the day, what do you want to achieve? And so female is, if to James's point, doesn't address African-American females. It says there's going to be a percentage, but how do you want to get to the goal? And and from this, the CMGC is required to provide us a diversity plan, and our expectation is we'll ask and tell the CMGC to address not only the contractual components, but the COAC expectations in their diversity plan. So this is a start, and it is a start of your request to say the community ought to have goals, and these are your goals, your expectations of what's going to happen on this project. And I would say the more specific you can be, the better direction that gives the contractor of what they need to do to meet community expectations.
And Andre, real quickly, James has a question.
Yes, James. You're on mute, James.
You okay?
Yeah, now we can.
Yeah. So let me just be real clear, because you guys, y'all have these things at these higher levels with goals and so forth. For many years, ODOT has had goals. They've met every one of their goals. There still ain't no Black people working for y'all, for real. Okay. So one of the things for real that y'all could do, which is basically common sense, you need to do an assessment. Why aren't there any more Black women in this industry? You need to take some money out and ask Black people for real why Black women are not going into construction. That's a simple thing. That's what people do when they really want to solve a problem. They do a baseline assessment of really what's going on in the industry, and then they come back with the problem, and then they pose a solution to the problem. Why don't y'all do that like everybody else does? If I was in the business industry and I wanted to know why customers are not buying, I would give a survey out and ask what the hell's going on. I can't sell these donuts. Let's do that, people. Let's find out what's really going on. Take some money out of this big billion-dollar budget and really figure out why there's no African Americans in this process. That's what I want you all to do. Let's get down to the real business.
Great suggestion, James. We have part of that information already, and we can come back and share that with you.
Yeah, but the problem is you keep presenting this as this minority male, minority female, and everything. Disaggregated from the very get-go. Start from the
okay. That's what we're trying to do right now, James. Is minority male. How many is? Let's start at the top. Minority male. That's for minority males. Is 25% the right number at a broad sense? I'm just asking the whole group. Is everyone comfortable with that? You want it higher, lower? And then we can disaggregate how many African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans.
Not high enough. I'd say 40% is closer. If you're going to actually disaggregate and have room to grow, African Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, you need more than 25%.
Okay, this is of the total workforce. So you're saying your number, 40%, Michael?
40% minority.
40%. Other comments?
And real quick, I want to make sure Felicia gets in here as well. She's had her up for a while.
Felicia?
So I want to go back to Amber's question. What do I expect as a COAC member?
Mm-hmm.
And my expectations, because I'm on this committee or this advisory board, to serve the community. So my expectations are more along the lines of how do we make this process more transparent for our community to be able to come and be part of this process? And how do we hold the pipeline itself accountable? And I'll give you really, really concrete examples, because I think that will be helpful. So as someone that's managing another big contract, we actually went to the community and said, at the end of the day, you know, we can't accomplish everything, but what are things that would, one, begin to build trust in the community with the state of Oregon? What are the things that at the end of the day, what would success look like? And one of the things they said, which I would encourage COAC to do, is that we know that Oregon is predominantly white. We know certain sectors are predominantly white. That's not what the question is, but what are they going to do to make the cultural change? And we want it in writing. We don't want aspirational goals. We don't want attainment. We want concrete examples of how they're actually going to do it. For example, when James was mentioning the bank for the Oregon Cares Fund, we specifically asked that bank, what are you going to do to make sure that African Americans will be able to enter the C-suite? Which means we're asking, what are you going to do to change the hiring practices? It's not about the individual contract. When I'm thinking about myself being on this advisory board, what are systematic changes that we can make long-term past the contract that actually changes the industry? And so Umpqua has made a commitment to look at their hiring practices and change them to have people of color enter the C-suite. So yes, we're going to have a banking relationship, but what we got out of it was we actually listened to the community, and the community was saying, we want change, long-term change in these companies that are predominantly white. What are the things that we can use in this unique opportunity to make systematic change? And so I want to really emphasize this systematic change. These goals, great. But if they don't change the actual system, that's why I'm on this COAC board. What's the point? Now, Umpqua is going to be looking at its hiring practices and how they look at hiring leadership. And they're doing what James just said. Why aren't there Black people in the C-suite? Why aren't there such and such in the C-suite? And they're looking at ways to actually change their hiring practices. So that's what I think, that's the part that I want to use Andre and Amber as an example. It's not about these numbers. It's deeper than that. What are the systematic cultural changes that we're going to have in this industry to really go back and say, okay, you say you're going to, let's just use Walsh, because I think that's the easiest. Walsh, what are you going to do specifically to make sure that there's Black people in leadership? I don't care that you had 10 journeymen or whatever. What are you actually going to do? And we want it in writing, and we want it in writing so we can hold you accountable to what you said you were going to do for the community. So that's what I think as a COAC member. When I'm on the board of Northeast, when I'm on that board, my goal is to make sure that there are people that were displaced in the community to be able to live in those units. It doesn't matter all the obstacles or barriers. At the end of the day, why all that money was built was to make sure that people that were displaced in that neighborhood could live in there. That is my primary focus. It doesn't matter. When I look at the developers on there, all the excuses they give me, I don't pay attention to that. I'm just like, how are you going to get to this goal? So my thing for this, for all of you guys, is how are you going to get to the goal to really change the industry so it's more inclusive for women and more inclusive for people, and that all of these entities change their hiring practices so that people of color are in leadership. I hope that is as clear as possible as I can be. So that's my 2 cents.
I thank you. The goal of this is to do exactly what you said, Felicia, that if the COAC says, let's say 40% to Michael, and we get down to what you disaggregate that to the contractor, then is ODOT's not going to hire anybody. However, the contractor is, and we know there's barriers there. We know there's barriers at the JETC. We know there's barriers to even get people interested in the trades. You know, there's barriers to equipment, childcare, a lot of things. But we can then charge the contractor with, how are you going to hire people and changes you're going to make at your JETC, because they're members of the JETC. How are they going to change the hiring practices to ensure that people of color are participating on this project, and they're participating in the manner you want to see them participate, not just as apprentices, but, you know, if you want to see journey, if you want to see management, and you want to see them graduate. So those metrics are defined by the COAC, and we can ask the contractor then, to your point, how are they going to do it? Because ODOT's not going to hire people. They're not going to change the JETC, and they're not going to change BOLI rules. But they can request that the contractor, who is the hiring entity, make those changes. As a contractor, they can make changes at the JETCs, make those requests. If there's requests at BOLI, we have commitment from BOLI to work to make changes, but the contractor has to tell us how, and tell you really how they're going to make those changes, just like Umpqua Bank told you this is how they're going to achieve the goal. And that's what we're trying to get to is, if this is really your expectation, then we need the contractor to lay out their plan to hire those people, to break the barriers down. And from your technical standpoint, is that good enough, or do we need the contractor to do more to get to African-American females on this project? Because you're right, setting the goal is not going to get them there.
So
you have to break the barriers.
But I think it's more important, Andre, the part that I'm really trying to emphasize, it has to be in writing with clear expectations with the outputs and the outcomes from these contractors. That's the part I want to emphasize, not the numbers, but the outputs and the overall long-term outcomes. Because if they're really committed to making the cultural changes to make the industry more inclusive for people of color and women, then the only way we can hold them accountable is for them to put their actual plans and how they're going to do it in writing.
That's what we're asking them to do.
Yes, we've asked them. It's actually, Felicia, it's in the charter that is now been adopted by y'all.
And it's actually in their contract that they provide a diversity plan with specifics of how they're going to achieve the goals. And so that is a written, your responsibility is to review that and say, is that sufficient? And part of that is, are we just not achieving the numbers, but are we changing the cultural and the mechanics of the system so that once this project is done, is there systematic, to your point, systematic changes? Are there changes that continue beyond this project? Because if it's a one and done, yes, you may get people to work, but do they continue to work after this project is what I think you're getting to.
Yeah, and Andre, I think you really pointed out when you were laying it out earlier, all the problem areas where the obstacles and barriers are. They need to be able to address those problem areas, the obstacles and barriers, and what long-term investments they are going to do to address those obstacles and barriers in all of those pain point areas. Because what I found, and I just really want to reiterate what James is saying, numbers like this actually don't move the dial. The pain points that you really pointed out with written expectations of stating the problem, how they're going to address the problem, and how they're going to financially invest in solutions is where the change actually occurs. So I would want, as a COAC member, those pain points that you just laid out, because I'm not in construction, those are more valuable to me than these numbers. For me personally, as someone that does this sort of DEI work, these numbers, and Mike, I'm going to put you on blast, and James will tell you, these numbers actually don't move the dial. What you just actually pointed out, those problem pain point areas, are addressing those are actually what moves the system and actually leads to the change. So I just want to emphasize that piece.
Yeah, and I agree. I think there's two parts here. One, we need the contractor to put people on the project and hire people and kind of fill slots. But the other side is to do that, that creates a demand. On the other side, you need to remove the barriers and reduce barriers and fund things to get people actually to meet the goals. Because if they don't meet the goals, or it's not systematic and it's not long-term and it doesn't have a resiliency. So you actually, in my view, have to do both. You have to change all the barriers and reduce the barriers, and that's investment, and that's change in culture. We have a harassment-free zone that the contractor is required to put in place here on this project that reduces, harassment from people in hazing and hate type of crimes that you see on construction projects that have historically been huge barriers to minorities of any kind coming on a project, and especially females, because of the hazing and just hate crimes that occur on construction projects. So those are things that we're trying to address, that the contractor has to address back to you and us and in writing. And we have to make sure that it's sufficient if we want to meet whatever the numeric goals is at the end of the day, and for it to be resilient.
We have Lee and James.
So before we go on, I just want to summarize what I heard. So I heard two things. One was from Michael around the targets was 40%. Was that right, Michael?
So I was just saying, raise the number of minority male percentage to 40.
Okay. And then the other thing that I heard, and Felicia, I have down all the barriers. The other thing that I heard was to focus on addressing the systemic barriers within the workforce and the workplace practices. That was the second one. Is that right? You really want?
Yeah, and also, this is a part, I'm not in construction, so I want to really emphasize this. When they do not meet these expectations, what is the consequence for that? And if they meet these expectations, what's the actual reward for that? And I'm asking construction in general, because I think those are just as important, because we really want to reward the construction industry that's really making the real hard change. And we want to put the people that are not doing it on blast, to be honest. I think there needs to be some consequence for the people, for the companies that are not taking this seriously. They should not be getting contracts from the state. They should not be getting contracts from the city. They shouldn't. And the people that are, the companies that are really making that difference, they should be really recognized for that. So that's the other piece, Amber, I would add too.
And I think that's at the end of this kind of work, as we go through the expectations for the COAC, is a conversation that we want to have with, as Felicia just put. So if they don't meet these, what do you want ODOT to do?
Yeah.
If they do meet them, what do you want them to do? But on the other side, what's the stick and what's the carrot? And where does ODOT, what would be the request of ODOT to do? And that's a conversation that we can have and talk to ODOT about, because these are not contractual, but what is it that they believe they could do if the expectations aren't met?
Okay, I want to move on to Lee and James, and then Art. And folks, please, if you can keep your comments fairly short. I know there's a lot to say, but again, brevity is key to this evening. So thank you for that. So Lee.
promise I will not dominate this conversation. I'm going to give mine in rapid fire, so be prepared to take notes. Number one, and it's piggybacking off of everything that's been said to now. First and foremost, there's a question that came to my mind as to tagging on to what Felicia was just talking about. What are the penalties or the accountability tools and measures that this committee has? Which then leads to my next thought. What are the contractual obligations of the contractor? I think this committee needs to be briefed on that so we understand exactly what our role is. And in addition to that, are all these things being included into the contract, which is why we need to understand what's in their contract, because that's what will be the guiding document for the contractor. And if it's not, will there be a superseding agreement that will accompany the contract and the project that will bring together all the other parties that are required to make this happen, such as the JATC, unions, etc. Because we want to talk about things such as piercing the list. If it's not in the contract, we're going to be hard pressed to make this happen. The next point is we're talking about an environment in which this will happen, where multiple key projects will be going on. So trying to arbitrarily talk about raising limits to 40% is very unrealistic. We're talking about such projects as Burnside, PDX rebalancing, CRC project, and many, many others that's coming on board around calendar year 23, 24. And so we want to keep those things in mind, but we want to bring all that together into such things like a superseding agreement or into the contractual terms so that the contractor is aware of that and makes the adjustments. And last but not least, somebody touched on a little bit, but is a job site culture program going to be required of this contractor so that we can speak on that during these monthly meetings? Those are all the things I want to bring up.
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to address two things real quick. Yes, to the cultural, there's a harassment. We call it, ODOT calls it a harassment-free zone. There is a requirement. And the contractual requirements are in where it says Rose Quarter contract. These are actually, it says aspirational targets. They are aspirational targets. The apprenticeship goal are contractual requirements by trade. And those are the requirements. And the EEO, because it's a federal contract, these are the contractual requirements of the federal side of the contract.
I think you're missing the essence of what I was saying there. How is the contractor being required to respond? See, we're asking for disaggregated information and reports in that vein. Is that going to be put in the contractual terms of the contract so that the CMGC has to respond that way, so that we're talking apples to apples and not starting off on the wrong foot?
Yeah, we will provide you disaggregated data, and to the point of what we're trying to get to in here is, do you want to see these numbers disaggregated so we can tell the contractor we want to see, the COAC wants to see disaggregated numbers in terms of what they're anticipating and how they're going to solve the problem of getting to not just 25% minority or 40%, whatever the number is, but to individual ethnicity percentages by trade. If that's
what
the
are
question.
the accountability tools in that, Andre? Because I know that word, aspirational targets. So what does that mean? I think this committee needs to have a real clear understanding. What does that mean when we don't see this happen? And is 25% and these other numbers the maximum, or is this the floor? So, again, there's a lot to consider in this, to Felicia and James' point. And I want to make sure that we're really, really clear in these things moving forward. If they're aspirational, we need to understand that and work towards that end. If there's some accountability tools that can be put in place, we need to understand what those are.
Okay. James, I'm going to jump onto James.
Yeah. I think let's piggybacking off of what Lee and Felicia is saying. I think you guys who are, you're out front contractors on this stuff, you guys are going to have to really rethink, you know, your idea about how we're moving this agenda forward. This whole, you know, I'm a contractor. I was in the business for 30 some odd, 40 some odd years. And when I see the word aspirational, that's a message for me as a contractor. That means I ain't got to do nothing for real. That's really what aspiration means. And there's no consequence to you not doing anything for real. So when you put that on your agenda like here as aspiration, it really sends a message. Let me just be real honest with you. And whether you know it or not, because you're not in the industry and you're not working out here, it just tells everybody out there, hey, we ain't necessarily got to do this. So don't put that up there like that. What's wrong with just having a target and letting people know they got a target as opposed to an aspirational? I know y'all tethered to the federal regs and all that other stuff, but at the end of the day, if you want to get results, don't let people know that this ain't for real, okay? Secondly, why not reverse your thinking? Instead of talking about putting out minority male first, why don't you put the disaggregated number and work back to minority male? Why don't you put the thing we're really interested in first and then go back to something that you know you want to get back to, which is a collaborative. This is presentation. This is language. These words mean things to people. So, you know, I just want you all to know, Felicia may not be in construction, but she's a very smart woman. Let me just tell you that. She understands what we're talking about here. So rethink what you guys are doing, Andre and Amber. Rethink about how what your presentation is. Don't be so locked into the federal craziness that has gotten us nowhere.
Yeah, this is Amber. I will totally own that. And the other reason why I will own that, James, is because, as you know, for interstate, the goal was aspirational as well, and we were able to achieve it. So you're right, the language matters. And I love your other idea.
So a common theme that I'm hearing from the committee is you want to disaggregate the minority male and female by ethnicity. And so we will do that. We will put those relative to what the population is in the metro area disaggregated, so that it would be about 8-12, I believe, so about 8% African American of the 25% would be African American for minority or female.
Art?
Yeah, thank you. On the contractor side, oftentimes are out on the projects. They say aspirational, and people throw their interpretation in there. I think it needs to be clear. I think that's been said many times. But if we wanted to really a very clear outcome-based model for the associations that do participate in them, and it works on all layers, from all of the minority-based organizations to the and I say minority associations, minority contractor associations like NAMCO, Latino Built, and such as also the Wall and Ceiling Association, the AGC. If we can have a very clear outline for those groups, then it'd be easy to protect the expectation that would be said, because businesses, like James has pointed out, they're all aligned with like-minded people, and they are comfortable with the way that they do things. It would be better to have a very solid, simple, easy program for them to follow. And if you disaggregate your expectations, then they know they have to do it. And how do we get there? I think that is a hard thing to do. I think we have to take one section that we can possibly achieve and and also make it very clear, so that way they know that the outcome that we're looking for is very simple to achieve. It's just an action that needs to take place. So that's my 2 cents. I think if we wanted to communicate, we should bring association EDs together and sit down and go over some of the ways that they like to have information in a deliverable method. I think we'd get the message out quickly. And just so you know, I sit as the vice president of the Wall and Ceiling Association, and they just met last week trying to figure out how to meet the needs of the community. So there is some movement that way. They're hearing the pressure, and I was excited to see that and be a part of that committee. So just know that we have to be very clear and simple, and disaggregating, it's going to make it easier for us to do. And a no harassment policy, that needs to be very outlined. People don't understand sometimes you say no harassment, that you're also meaning discrimination in the word harassment. So let's be clear about that as well.
Absolutely, and we can get the contractual language around the harassment free that is required there. So I just want to confirm, we're talking about disaggregation. The other kind of concept that I'm hearing is that to get rid of the aspirational, just have targets, and that we also need to discuss and talk about what are the penalties for if you don't achieve this, and what are the other side, what are the kind of accolades or
the carrot.
Carrot.
Yeah.
The carrot that we can provide to the contractor if they do achieve to the aggregation and the what I'm really hearing is the COAC is asking that these aren't expectations, these aren't targets, aspirational, these are really requirements of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kenichi and then Michael Birch.
I'll keep this really quick. I think the presence of the pre-apprenticeship programs as part of this whole structure is really important. If we're moving the goals to 20, 30, 40, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we're working in close relationship with those organizations that do the recruiting from the ground up. As a trade association for firms, I have to say that we really work hand in hand with the workforce folks, because our goal and our purpose is to help build up the construction firms. And so having a good relationship and certainly supporting the work of the pre-apprenticeship program and sharing some of these goals with them, I think will be vitally important in meeting some of these larger goals that we have in place. So Art, I do agree with you that there's a place for trade associations, but I know that the core work of trade associations is not in the grassroots recruitment of community. I think we do lend a hand to that and certainly make sure that we tell business owners about the benefits of ownership and running your own business and growing the workforce. But it's really important that we get support and get the buy-in and honestly get the view of these organizations that do the actual recruitment and training of these workers.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Michael Birch.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that what we're looking at is a screenshot of workforce expectations. The numbers that we place, whether they're aspirational or targets, right, are multi-faceted, because we have a hard goal. For us, it's a hard goal that then we translate to the apprenticeship programs, the JATCs, to say we need to reach these goals. So in fact, we need to be more intentional about bringing the people to the table that are going to help contractors meet those goals going forward. That's only a small piece of this effort. We need disaggregation in terms of what level they are, first term, third term, fifth term, journey level worker per craft, so that we can shepherd these folks through the apprenticeship program and not watch them drop off after their first year because they're just there to meet a diversity goal. Contractors, I mean, this whole thing from the workforce side, which is where I've lived for quite some time now, it's complicated, and we can unpack it. And I'd also like to say that workforce does not have to be pitted against the contracting, because both are crucial. Most of the business owners come out of formal training programs, and that's how they get into business as a rule, I think, as an average. And so we need to work on our JATCs. We need to work on the pre-apprenticeship programs. We need to work on the contractors. We need to work on the positive job site culture on job sites. You bring in 10,000 apprentices over a course of 10 years and you lose 60% of them. It's not because the work is too hard. It's because of a multitude of things that I'm hoping ODOT and its infinite wisdom, with the help of the expertise on this committee, can help move the dial so that there are policy changes. We're going to our contract, our collective bargaining agreement next year with new language around harassment and discrimination. Every single one of these contractors has a harassment and discrimination policy hanging on the wall in the job shack. But are they enforcing it? That's the problem. They are not. We need to have teeth. We need to have support. We need to come together to fight this with all of our expertise, because the problem is complicated, multifaceted, and what we can do here is something that hasn't been done yet. And there's expertise, as I look at the pictures of the folks participating, there's institutional knowledge and wisdom that can help move the dial. So use the expertise you have.
Yes.
Art, and then James, and then Amber and Andre, I'm going to ask that you wrap this up so we can go to public comment. So Art?
Yes, I'd like to make comments to the JTCs and the labor unions. One of the things that we have as an issue on the contractor side when it comes to harassment is that it's a one-sided relationship, and it goes only back to the contractor side. And it's really what, if we want to get rid of harassment on the job site in total, there needs to be a follow through. And Michael, what I mean by that is that there's normally articles under the obligation of a union member when they join, and we never really see anybody brought up charges. So I really, in order to get to what we want to strive on the job site, we also need to have a follow through where the regional council or the international, whoever's managing the memberships, that they follow through with the same processes that the contractors are obligated to. I've seen it and witnessed it, and many times dealt with it as the carpenters and finishers know. On the other side, to build support for development of businesses to be more available for public works and become more integral in the diverse community of contractors, we also need to know how to properly communicate to them all, because there's a lack of trust. I mean, we look at it, this group is a good example of it. So we need the help of the businesses in a partnership model if we can start breaking down the barriers. And I do believe that some of these associations have the ability to build that support inside all of this, all of the different associations that lead to the job site expectations. Because if they don't put the demand on top of what the job expectations, only as long as the project is when they're acting on it. We want to create a new culture, something that's everlasting and sustainable. So we have to work with the groups that actually keep that going. So I hear everything, and we have to follow. Now the reward, I wanted to talk about that, and I've brought it up in the CEIC group. There has to be some sort of tax benefit for businesses to want to follow this process. How do we reward them? When they do that and they can prove it, and their CPAs can come out and say, yep, they actually proved that they performed this, we need to give a credit. We need to do a tax break for contractors that are willing to do the right thing. That is going to be the way you're going to move that needle on the contractor side. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Amber, Andre, did you want to react to any of that?
Hey, you got me in there.
Yeah.
I haven't forgot about you, James. I just want to make sure that they react to Art's comments first.
No, I think they're good comments. Some of the things we can deal with here at the COAC, some of the things that Art brought up about tax incentives, just a little broader than our scope here. But there's the legislature's in session this year, so there's nothing that says we can't, as a COAC, make a recommendation to the legislature around some type of incentive program.
Well, and I have a question for Lee and Kenichi. So for Lee, I would really love to know what.
Hey, Amber, sorry to interject. We don't have time for a lot of back and forth, so I'll ask that you.
Yeah, I will. So yeah. I'll make the request, and then I'll follow up with you in writing, Lee and Kenichi, which is, so what does the county do as it relates to the accountability for these kinds of things? And Kenichi, also, it would be great, especially because of all of the work PBDG does with other agencies. What do they do as it relates to accountability? And then James could go, and then I have a couple wrap-up points. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say that this piece around reward and penalties or sanctions, whatever it is, as a contractor, when you hire people from a community that's been traumatized, then you take on the traumatization of all the people that work for you. I mean, there's consequences for racism. There's consequences for discrimination that is reflected in who you have to deal with as a community and who you have to deal with in your workforce. I ran a almost completely African-American paving crew for 20 years. And you have no idea of the kinds of traumatization that Black people have experienced over their lives living in this community of all white folk. And this is on an individual level. And so when you have a contractor who has a disproportionate number of African Americans working for him, you can go look behind the scenes and see the sort of energy and resources they have to expend to keep those people working for them 24/7. So I don't know if you guys really understand what I'm talking about, but so to talk about rewarding is not the answer. You need to compensate people for the work that they do with these troubled populations of people who you are thinking that they're just everyday people like every other white guy out here. They're not. There needs to be some understanding that there is a special quality and ability of people who can work with people who have been traumatized, just like any other special group that's out here. Let me just be real clear about that. And then you ought to talk about not only how do you reward them, how do you build capacity out of that group that's been hurt? We're not talking about reparations or all that other stuff. We're talking about a dollar-to-dollar issue in an industry, in a commodity kind of driven economy in which people have to take into account what their sacrifices are and how they are going to be successful in the industry. So I'm saying when you're talking about reward, and of course on the other side of that is the guys who don't have to hire none of us, who people who typically go to work and they do their job and they go back home, they ain't got to face racism. Put that into you all's mentality about how you're doing this stuff, and then you will understand the need to reward a Ray Moore or a Colas or all these other guys out here who are really meeting their goals. And y'all just thinking, well, this is just business as normal. It ain't business as normal. That's what when Felicia talks about the CARES Fund, she's talking about all these payday loan people who have been living off the back of Black people all their lives, or poor people. Y'all got to think a little differently about how you begin to mitigate this program and work on behalf of our community.
Great, thank
I'm
you.
just sharing that. I'm done.
Appreciate that. I'm going to ask for Joe to wrap us up on this piece, and then Amber, Andre, please finish your presentation in 2 or 3 minutes if you can, and then we need to go to public comment. So Joe?
Yes, I've been listening and lots of good conversation, but I guess moving forward, I would just say I'm a little confused. Moving forward, I would like to get a better understanding of what we can really expect to do. I'm hearing, I wouldn't call it pushback, but I'm just hearing, you know, contractual obligations, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of good suggestions and recommendations, but what can we really do is my question. Because I'd rather just get to what we can do and what we can't do and then work from there. Thanks.
Amber, Andre, do you want to answer that question and then wrap us up with your presentation?
I think, well, first, what you can and can't do from a COAC standpoint, and Lee had brought up from a contractual standpoint. From a COAC standpoint, you can make recommendations. You can, and all of the recommendations, the contractor's required to respond in writing. You can provide assistance. You can, as someone mentioned, how to help the contractor. You can provide criticism if that's they're not doing well. So from that standpoint, your oversight, your input is something that the contractor has to respond to. And they're going to respond in writing, and you can look at that and tell us if it's good enough or they need to do better. So from that standpoint, that's part of the accountability side. And I'll just leave it at that. That's what you can do. Contractually, we can come back. We'll come back and talk about what contractual obligations the contractor has. Specifically, that, you know, it's just a hammer. If they're not doing it, there are issues that we can penalize them. Amber, you want to? I think we.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up, which is so this was the first of a few conversations. We're going to keep track of all of these comments in a community matrix like we had done previously. So this is the first of other conversations. We'll also have another conversation about DBE and expectations around that as well. We don't have any more time, is that right, Jono?
You have got 2 more minutes.
Okay. Well, we have one more slide related to the schedule, so I guess we need to move on. Oh, well, Stephen has a question.
If you can wrap up, Amber, and then I'll take any last minute questions before we go to public comment. Did you want to touch this key timeline slide real quickly?
Yeah. So Megan talked a little bit about the timelines for the design. Essentially, the CMGC, ODOT and the CMGC are beginning negotiations, hopefully having someone on later this, in the next several months. They're also the other part of the team. Remember, this is a CMGC, in which case there's a design team that's also working on the design of the project, and that will be done next year, with construction starting later in the year, and then actually having dollars and being able to report on the actual utilization of DBEs and workforce at the end of 2021 and at the beginning of 2022. So, but between now and then, once the CMGC is on board, there will be plenty of work to do around the diversity plan and their approach as it relates to before construction starts. Lots of work.
Great. Thank you, Amber, Andre, on that. Stephen, did you have a question to wrap us up?
Yeah, just a quick question. I think one thing that would be helpful for me to the last slide would to give it some more context is maybe something that talks about historic numbers that Hamilton and Raymore have had on previous projects, because I definitely understand the legality of aspirations versus what people need to do, but I guess it would also be helpful to know historically where they've landed on other projects, just to give it some more context and flavor.
Okay,
we can do that. I can ask ODOT to pull the Hamilton contracts from their reporting for the workforce, and I'll disaggregate the numbers so we can look at the numbers for, say, the last 3 years.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, we're going to go to public comment now. And for members of the public, you may provide written comments to info@i5rosequarter.org with the subject line COAC public comment. All written comments received will be added into the meeting record. For those who would like to offer public comments during today's meeting, you have up to 60 seconds to speak. Please use the raise hand button. Candace will unmute you when she calls on you. Please speak about today's topic if at all possible. And again, use info@i5rosequarter.org with COAC public comment and subject line to provide comment. So with that, Candace, can you tell COAC who we have for public comment?
Sure. Thanks, Janelle. So far, I don't see any hands raised. So for our public attendees, if you do have a comment or wish to make one, again, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a raise hand button. So please go ahead and click that if you wish to make a comment.
Okay, seeing none. One last call. Okay, let's see.
One here for
Bill Bruce.
Yep.
With Bill Bruce, you're on for 60 seconds. Bill, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Megan, can we talk to Bill because he's the contractor?
Think he's allowed to make a comment.
Okay.
All right. My comment is that was a great conversation, you guys. That was really good. Really good. Look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Other comments by members of the public? Okay. Amber, Andre, or Megan, any last minute comments in terms of our next steps? First, before I kick it off to you, let me just thank COAC for, again, another rich discussion. This is exactly why you all have been invited to be around the table, is to help think outside the box and really wrestle with and ponder all of the challenges. It's one thing to build a project. It's another thing to build a project with all of the social equity goals that we all expect. And as we know, we've done this before in other projects, and we can do it again on this one. So thank you for your candor this evening. So with that, Megan, maybe I'll kick it off to you, and then Amber, Andre, feel free to wrap us up with anything else.
So before we wrap up, I apologize for interjecting. My internet kept going in and out, and I missed the last 5 minutes of conversation. But one thing that I would love to see from this is a historical view on ODOT's utilization of diverse firms on their different projects. And I know, I kind of figured since you're going back and looking at workforce data, you could tag this on. Something that I'd love to have be a product of this particular project is see diverse participation of firms, and not just workforce, but I want to see firms grow out of the DBE program because of the work that they do with ODOT. And so I'm really wanting this committee to push ODOT to be intentional about having 5 or 6 or 20 Raymores, or any firm that wants to grow and wants to really spread their wings on ODOT should be giving that opportunity. So I'd like to see what ODOT has done in the past and how they've been intentional about growing firms through their projects.
So this is Andre. So just to clarify, I can probably go back 3 years with ODOT and look at all of you want to know the DBE participation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we can look at the DBE participation over the last 3 years and do it by ethnicity from that standpoint, if that works for you.
That'd be great.
And it's just going to give you dollars.
Perfect. I was going to say, I'd love to see the dollars attached to it, because I think what has been started with Raymore is great. I want to see that be widespread.
Okay. And it's just going to be for ODOT. It's not specifically to Hamilton. It's not specific.
No, just for ODOT.
Yeah. Okay.
Just for ODOT.
Megan, any last comments?
Jonelle is reiterating a lot of what you just said. Thank you. This is precisely why we've invited you to be here, is to help us come up not only with the contracting language that we have in place now, but the community expectations that we'll need to be meeting as we're moving forward. So thanks for starting this conversation.
Great. Amber?
I thought this was fabulous. So I just thought it was cool. Thank you.
Andre?
This is what I wanted, on target. One thing I would say is the next conversation, we will disaggregate before we even talk. So loud and clear on that one. But I hope we keep this type of conversation going, and type of inquiry, and really questioning us as to do better, and pushing us to do better. So thank you.
Great. Well, with that, thank you, all of you, for your diligent time and your excellent counsel. Please continue to stay safe and healthy, and we will see you next month. Be looking for emails from us with additional details for our next meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.